We gotta go back.
SK14.
I'm not a leftist, I'm a liberal, and we should just talk to each other. Okay, but what are we gonna talk about? Because you don't want to talk to people like me. You don't want to talk to anybody who's got anything to say. You want to talk to Jewy Jewstein, who says,
Got a lot of questions about Israel in the last week.
Yeah.
I apologize for my defense of our greatest ally in the Middle East.
Yeah.
I will not apologize.
We know you won't, bitch.
My defense of
Epic,
Israel.
epic.
shut up, you bitch. This guy's the biggest scum-sucking, anti-American loser, traitor.
Who likes Cardi B? 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 Who likes Cardi B?
He's mad. He's mad. Look at that shriveled up little face.
Who likes Cardi B? Who likes
Eat
Cardi
a
B?
gamer moment.
SK14 gang.
In the last week.
Yeah.
I will apologize for my defense of our greatest ally in the Middle East.
Yeah.
I will not apologize.
We know you won't,
for
bitch.
that. But I'm always just very puzzled at times when I get the amount
I'm
of
so
attention
puzzled.
that
I'm so
on
puzzled all the
the
time.
Middle East, the only place where all three monotheists,
Somebody's got to go Joker mode.
Who likes Cardi B? 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 Who likes Cardi B?
All right, guys. Sorry about that. I was trying to share this over on Gab, and I think I might have commented on Steve Franson's thing, and I don't want to mess up what he's got going on over there because I was unaware of the surroundings on my Explorer page. So that's just not very convenient. Dang it. So let me get this shared over on Gab. All right, I think it's over there posted. So, all right. Kind of a rocky start to a comeback to YouTube, if you will. It's been it's probably been a week or so, I would imagine. I don't go live over on YouTube too often because, well, quite frankly, I can't say what I want to say. I can't speak about the truth and what's going on in America, or else I'll get my third strike and then I'll lose my ability to go live on YouTube, which is very inconvenient, I guess. There might be situations in the future that, you know, would lead to opportunity that I would have to be able to go live to YouTube. You know, maybe if I'm on a panel talking about politics or the dissident right or whatever it may be, I always want to leave that opportunity for me to be able to go live on YouTube. And to be able to do that with having the two strikes that I have to watch what I kind of say, which is going to make today's podcast very tricky. Oh, what do I mean by that? Well, I would like to talk about topics referring to what the United States government is doing when it comes to the mandates. I won't say what mandates or what pandemic that I might be referring to, but that's what I would like to be discussing today because I think we're in a very tricky time where we can, as the American people, lose the headroom that we have right now, because it seems to me as if we are in the part of what's been going on for the last couple of years. We're at a point where the media, the mainstream, the Biden administration is starting to lose the narrative. Well, why are they losing the narrative? Because they played it for too long. They let what they were doing last so long that the people that were fighting against it believed that they were doing it out of maliciousness or whatever the case may be, started to pick up on things that is very hypocritical of what they're doing. What do I mean by that? Well, that's a trick. Like I said, this is going to be a very tricky podcast to get around without saying some of those trigger words. So we can't say, you know, the big C, little v. We can't refer to, you know, the jab, the second jab, the, you know, the boosters, any of that stuff. So they've had this control for a long time. And what they can do is they can pretty much come out and say, this is for the benefit of the American people, whether you agree with it or not. You should not be so selfish. Take a little bit of consideration to your fellow American into mind and do the things that need to be done so we can get past this. Well, two things happened there. They let it drag out to the point where people no longer believe that there was an end in sight. And I'm one of those people. I don't believe this will ever end as long as we allow them to continue to hold the narrative, hold the power, hold the message that's being sent out to the majority of the population of the United States. I think they are going to have the ability to manipulate that to take advantage of some of the lower IQ people in the United States to have them do their will. And that is not good. That's not what a federal government should be doing. Not in this case anyways. Now, if you were talking about trying to hold a polite society, trying to hold a more secure society, trying to hold a more, well, not more, but less violent society, in all of those cases, if the federal government was using the information that they had to control the population for the better of everybody, then that might be a good thing. And that's where they're kind of losing the narrative here. That they are starting to see the things that they're doing with COVID for the percentage of, you know, whatever it may be for people, you know, dying or being vaccinated or being, you know, immune to the vaccination, whatever the percentages are, they are less, or I'm trying to think of a good word here to use. They aren't as worrisome as some of the other things going on in the United States. So if they are able to take this principle and these things and use it towards what's going on with the big C, little v, if they're going to use it for that, then the people that are fighting against this regime that we have in America that has control of America right now, then we can use it to benefit us. If you can come out on a podium as the president of the United States and say that we're going to mandate this for our employees, our employers, over employers that have 100 employees or more, because it benefits the majority of the United States. And we should, as patriots, be able to have that self-sacrifice to get beyond this thing that has controlled our lives for so long. Okay, that's fine. I hear you. But if we're going to use it in that scenario, well, let's use it in some other scenarios. So one, there is a article. I don't have all the information, and I don't know what all I'm allowed to say on YouTube referring the situation, but there was a young lady, I believe she was 24, and she was at some type of department store, probably a Walmart, something like this, and she was being followed, or a man was lurking around her. She felt uncomfortable. This being a white woman, texted her friend and said, "This guy's giving me bad vibes." But for whatever reason, the mainstream narrative has been that if you see something, say something, and it refers to a minority, then this is racist. And you should not do this, even if it was to make the difference between life or death. So even though she just sent this, you know, text message, this guy's giving me bad vibes, if she would have called the police, if she would have shouted for help, if she would have turned around and just confronted this gentleman that was being kind of, you know, creepy, I guess, if she would have done any of these things and it would have not ended up with her dying at the end of the story, then she would have been looked at as a racist. And this is a very, you know, delicate, dangerous situation here. And if we look at, you know, the percentages, the likelihoods, we have to take into account the ethnicities, the crime rates, the neighborhoods, the crime rates in those neighborhoods. And whereas this young lady unfortunately fell victim to a horrible, murder, there are people that refuse to believe this narrative that would have either never been in that situation to begin with, or when those red flags started to go up, she would have looked beyond being called a racist and went into survival mode and did whatever she had to do, regardless of the outcome, to remove herself from that situation. Now, I'm not blaming her for ending up dead, by no means. Who I am blaming is the mainstream, the Biden administration, all the progressives that refuse to see the data and the facts that are laid out before us. If I go into the city where I'm from, and remind you, I am in a pretty rural white neighborhood is where I live, but periodically I do have to go to the city, one of these huge cesspools, these Democrat cesspools, which we might get on to a little bit more about the local areas that I'm talking about. But when I go down to these cities and put myself in those situations because I have no other choice, I have to go down there for doctor's appointments, for pain management, or I have to go into the city to gather some paperwork to add my wife to my insurance. So these are things that I can't avoid, that I have to go into the city to get. Now, when I'm in the city, my surroundings become more aware to me. I'm more aware of who is close to me, what they're doing, are their hands in their pocket. And yeah, you can call it racist if you want, but I also take notice of the ethnicity, of the body language that person is signaling off, because in that city, as far as the crime rates go, when you're talking about violent crime rates, the majority of those crimes are committed by minorities. So I think it would be not very intelligent for me to take that into account when I'm down there. Not only that, but I am also adding in all the lived experience of me growing up in that city, because that's where I grew up. I know how things work down there. Okay, I know that if I wear a Make America Great hat down there, people are going to say things to me. They're not going to be nice things, and more than likely it's going to cause a conflict. And therefore, you don't see a lot of Trump hats when you go into these cities, just because they're smart enough to know that once they do that, they're putting a target on their back. Now, I don't think this lady, young lady at the Walmart or wherever it was wearing a Trump hat. In fact, I don't think she was a conservative at all, because I think she totally bought into this narrative that if she would have said something like, there's a black man behind me making me feel very uncomfortable and I may need help from the police, I may need help from the surrounding community to kind of de-escalate the situation. If she would have been conservative at least a little bit, maybe some of those factors would have became more of red flags for her to get out of that situation, or for her to look beyond being called a racist. And when I go into the city, every single time I know that I am putting myself in a situation where I could be on the 7 o'clock news being called a racist because I decided to defend myself against a minority that wanted to commit a violent crime. Even though I would be the victim in that scenario, the media would spin it as, here I am, this racist white supremacist that decided to target this minority that, just looked fishy. He was probably a good guy, right? He probably just graduated high school and went on to be accepted into his community college down the street or some stupid bullshit. Well, that has nothing to do with the fact that person was out there trying to seek out violence and commit violence towards white people. This is just something that we're going to have to learn to deal with as white people for probably the next decade or two. And so if you're going to use the federal government to manipulate the population to scare them into doing something on a percentage rate of, whether it be the death rate or the infected rate, whatever you want to go off of, if you are trying to scare these people into submission when it comes to vaccinations or a pandemic or, an outbreak of some kind, then you also have to use that when you go into any scenario. And I don't care what you say. I think that violent crime has affected more people in the longevity of things as far as the number game more than any pandemic has. I mean, look at a weekend in Chicago, how many people's lives are ended, as well as how many people's lives are affected by inner city violence. Now, the progressives refuse to look at these facts in this database, as well as they are constantly working against anything we would do to prevent these things. And I think it's to take away from, smart people, educated people, pointing this fact out that if you want to use this bubble of ideas, morals, and, cause and effect when it comes to a pandemic, then you have to use it towards violent crime in the inner city. And they don't want that to happen. They don't want their own game to be played against them. And that's what's going to start happening. You are going to have people in America start to wake up. And I said this in a previous podcast, and maybe I worded it a little wrong. Maybe I worded it in a way that some people would try to use it against me down the road. But what I said was, the more that they push we'll call it the George Floyd narrative, the more that they push this CRTs in our school, the more that they allow Martin Luther King Day to be celebrated and not Columbus Day, the more that a significant portion of the white population in America is going to start to wake up. And the way I phrased it, further back a couple podcasts ago was, you have to look at it like this. If you come home every day after work and work has kicked your ass, you're in a bad mood, you don't know what to do, and so you take it out on your wife, right? You get this attitude with your wife, maybe you manhandle her around a little bit, and you go, you know what, bitch, if you wouldn't be such of a whore and dress this way, then I wouldn't be in a bad mood like this, right? If every time you went to the grocery store, you wasn't trying to flirt with the cashier, then I wouldn't be in this mood. What are you going to do? You're going to turn your wife away from you. And at some point, she might end up doing some of these things that you're accusing her of. Even if she is the most loyal, loving wife there is. Once you shove this kind of shit down her throat so often, at some point she's going to turn against you. And this is what you have in the Zoomer Alpha generation in the United States when it comes to the white population anyways, the Christian population anyways. They weren't alive for 9/11. They weren't alive for some of these events that they've been fed, certain narratives and certain things about in school. So their unique, youthful minds are going, well, I didn't see that shit happen. And here it is every day I'm going into school, and you guys keep telling me that because I'm white, I'm the bad guy. Because I'm white, I'm not allowed to use every tool that's on the table to protect my life. And what you're doing is you keep saying, the Biden administration, the FBI, the CIA, they keep saying that the most dangerous thing when it comes to America and its security for the nation is this white supremacy. That's not the case. It's so much further from that. But because they keep targeting it, because they keep saying it, and because they keep shoving it down people's throats, now you have minorities that get this, like God complex, where they are better and they must fight against all this white supremacy that does not exist, which is in turn targeting this, alpha Zoomer generation growing up, that all they want to do is do the best they can. They want to go to church, seek out spiritual guidance. They want to go to college or a trade school and give back to their communities and have a polite society. But they are being told that they're the problem. Well, eventually they are going to become that problem that you keep accusing them of. And like I said, I think that there is room for that to be taken and misinterpreted the wrong way, where you could possibly say, what I'm getting at is, if you keep telling these youths that they are white supremacists, that you are then feeding into making the next generation of white supremacists. But I don't believe that. I think that you're calling them white supremacists, but what you're doing is you are going to force them to isolate themselves. So that they aren't white supremacists. They don't look at the world around them like that. They don't think that they are superior because they are white, but they are choosing to see what's going on. They are seeing every single day, every time they step into that classroom, what they're seeing is they are being attacked because they are white. So they might not think that they are superior because they are white, but they have noticed that they are going to have to take it into their own hands at some point to protect their fellow white Christian from the federal government, from these minorities that are being poured in through our borders, without any paperwork, without any accurate count, without any safety measures for what's going on as far as the pandemic. So at every turn, the minorities, the mainstream narrative, all these people have all the tools on the table to allow them to make whites a non-majority in 50 years. And now it is so apparent, it is so obvious that even the GOP is targeting other communities, other cultures, other classes, because they believe it themselves. So here we are as white Christians voting for the GOP, saying this is the party that is going to put the power back in we the people's hands and keep the people that are the majority, and do what's right for us, when they've already been brainwashed. They're not doing what's right for us. They're doing what they think is right to get them more votes 50 years from now. And that's not a 1 or 2 year game plan. That is a long-term game plan that you have to secure and obtain those votes. So we are going to the voting polls every single year, every election, and voting for a party that has already been manipulated, that has already been, infiltrated with the controlled opposition. They think that they're doing what's best for Republicans and for conservatives, but they're not. Appeasing gay communities, appeasing minority communities is not helping conservatives in America today, and it never will, because you can't play for both teams. That's not the way it works. That libertarian mindset shit's not going to work. And for whatever reason, the only thing that a lot of these Facebook conservatives took out of 2016 and the Trump revolution is that you can play both sides of the fence, that we can become conservative libertarians, and that's just not what we should have taken out of that. That wasn't the initial idea of the Trump revolution. It was, securing the borders, building the walls, putting the power back in the people's hands. They love their God. They love their people. That's what Trump said. He did not say play both sides of the fence. He did not say give everybody this idea to change definitions and morals to fit their degenerateness. That's not what he said. Yet, for whatever reason, this is what Facebook conservatives are doing nowadays, and it's hurting us. When it's the answer is right there in front of us. They are letting the COVID narrative slip. They are playing the numbers game. They are telling us that we have to do things that we do not want to do to help other people because, 0.003. Fuck 0.003. What about, the hundreds and thousands of white women that are killed every single year by minorities and violent attacks in the inner cities of these Democrat-ran cities? What about those numbers? What about that percentage? So we have the answer right in front of our face. We can play this game too, but we refuse to. You know why? Because the GOP is telling us not to. They are telling us we are no longer going to be the majority, and to keep power in the United States, we have to appeal to the gays and to the minorities. And this is outrageous. This is conserving nothing. We can keep calling them the GOP. We can keep calling them Republicans, but they are not conservatives. They are not, they're not even white nationalists. And I know that's used as a derogatory term nowadays, but that's not what they are. They're not nationalists. You support Trump, you support nationalism, whether you believe it or not. That was one of the main goals and main ideas that he took into 2016. That's why he was so popular. And that's why people like me keep trying to tell you the next person to run for president that runs on the grounds of saving white America is going to win in a landslide. Because guess what? Whether they like to believe it or not, whites are still the majority in this country. And there is a good portion of those whites that have not been brainwashed. Now, none of this has anything to do with whites being superior. This has everything to do with conserving our culture, our people, for our children. My children are white. I want them to grow up in the best country that they possibly can, where they are not targeted, where they are not brainwashed in class every single day. But until we have a president stand up, or somebody running for president stand up and say, this is happening. You see it all across the nation right now. They keep talking about this red wave, this GOP takeover that's going to happen in 2022. That's not what's happening. That is white Christian America realizing that they have been duped and they are no longer going to stand for it. They're not going to say it like that because it's not, optically appealing, but regardless of optics, it is the truth. And you're just going to have to get over that. If you're a conservative in America, if you're a white in America, if you're a Christian in America, you're just going to have to get over wanting to be optically appealing to everyone. Now, that's not to say we shouldn't have good optics. We absolutely should, because what we're trying to do is bring back this idea of a polite society in America where we can go out and walk down the streets in the inner city and we don't see half-naked degenerates, giving each other hand jobs while they walk down the street, where we can go to a McDonald's. Heaven forbid we have to go to McDonald's on a day that we're being rushed or whatever, and be able to tell if the cashier is a boy or a girl. One of these days, as soon as white Christian America realizes the significance of the community and the culture having control over itself, instead of taking all of its social cues from the media, from Hollywood, the better off we will be. And I think the before this can happen, before the ball can get rolling, we have to get over this idea that you're going to be looked at as a racist. So what? It's a fucking word. Get over it, okay? Did you do anything to physically harm a minority? Well, you didn't. Well, then who fucking cares what they said? Because what they're doing is actually going and attacking your children, actually going and brainwashing your children. And let me... I'm not sure how the comments... I don't usually have too many people watch me on YouTube here, so I don't know how recent this comment is. It could be old. But we'll try that, see if we are actually interacting with people. Like I said, I try not to be in an echo chamber, and this is, we're going to kind of shift gears here just a little bit, but just keep this in mind. As soon as we get over being afraid, you are letting fear and being scared of being called a word control how you are building the groundwork and the foundation for your children. Do you want to have all the tools that you possibly can? Do you want to create the best society and the best future for your children? Well, as white Christians, we have to get over being called a racist. I've had so many conversations on Facebook, in person, where the only thing that they have to combat what I'm saying is what I'm saying is being racist. Well, if it's the best for society, if it's the best for my children, why do I care if it's racist or not? Why do I care what vocabulary is being installed when they are changing all the words, all the definitions, all the goalposts are always being changed when it comes to the progressives and the liberals and society for a whole in America. Since they are doing this to the vocabulary, why should I care about it? So what if it's racist? If it's what is best for my children's future, I don't give a fuck what you call it, as long as it is actually the best. And that's kind of where I'll leave that there. And like I said, just keep in mind the tools to end this is in front of us. If we use the playbook that they're using to try to control us with the pandemic and what's going on in America right now, if we use that and install that to other portions of politics, they're gonna get away from that. And you can say that I'm crazy or that I don't know what I'm talking about, but I just want you to find a timeline of all the speeches and all the social events where the mayor of Chicago went out and spoke to the public. What she said, the narrative she was trying to set, and how she went about it, and how that changed over about a year and a half. She went from hating all white people, yeah, all police are bad, to losing control of her city. And as soon as she seen that happen, as soon as she seen that, this game plan that the federal government gave to her was not working, she changed it. She then started to embrace law and order to try to regain some of that control. Because at the end of the day, that's all that politicians really give a fuck about is power and control. And if she can't get that, she'll throw her fellow minorities and fellow weirdos right under the fucking bus just to get a little bit more power and a little bit more control. So just like I said, if you don't believe me, you don't think that's the way to change what's going on in the federal government right now when it comes to the pandemic, go look at Chicago. There's a very large-scale experiment being done with how progressives, liberals, Democrats are trying to manipulate us and control our society, and they're losing. They're not going to admit it. You're not going to have CNN come out and say that what they've been doing for the last 2 years is not working and has actually been a horrible thing for their cities. They're not going to say that. If that's what you're waiting for, you're a lost cause. You're a lost. There is no hope there. Now, I'm officially done with that. We're moving on, but just keep all that in mind because it is relevant to what we're about to talk about. So like I said, we all want to think that because we live in America, that the things that happen in Australia, the things that is happening in Canada can't happen here. You are dead wrong. As soon as they figure out a way, and they probably already are, they will try to insert as many of those political views and political mind control games as they possibly can. You've seen it with the Biden administration's 100-employee mandate thing. He knew it was unconstitutional. He came out and he said it anyways. This triggered employers to have meetings, my employer being one of them, to have meetings where they gathered all their employees and told them, look, whether you agree or disagree, it doesn't matter. Whether it's unconstitutional or not, it doesn't matter. The president has spoken. And we've seen over the last 2 years that the Constitution, the way things that has been done throughout history, doesn't matter. That if there's a will, there's a way, and they are going to try it. And because this looks like where things are headed, we are going to go ahead and write up a plan to enforce these mandates. Now, me along with other people that I work with all had the same question. If you're going to assume that these mandates are going to roll out and there's not going to be any judicial pushback, any constitutional pushback from the American people, if that's really what you're so naive to believe, what are you doing to help people with religious exemptions? Are you willing to lose 50% of your workforce? Because if you're going forward with something that is so, diversive as far as like these people believe this thing and these people believe this thing. I am under the belief that at least where I worked, it was 50-50. And maybe not 50-50, but at least 25-25, and then 50% that are these libertarians that want to sit on the fence and not say anything and figure out who wins. So we just wanted to know if this is what you're doing, if you're going to write out the game plan, like this is going to happen. What are you going to do? What are you willing to do for the people that will not accept this? Because you are going to have those people. And they didn't have a game plan for that. They just wanted to keep pressuring you, keep pushing you. And that's what we see with a lot of what Biden has going on with the infrastructure bill, with everything that Democrats are trying to do. We see his popularity drastically fall down. I tried telling you this for a long time. Democrats have no fucking idea what they're doing when it comes to anything. The only thing that they have mastered is infiltrating, the school systems, Hollywood. They know how to get in where they fit in, but they do not know how to fix America. They do not know how to run America, and they do not know how to make it great again. Believe me when I say that. So anyways, we're going into this with the idea that Biden truly thought he could just come out and say whatever he was going to say and that it was going to work. And that wasn't the case. We've seen it played out a different way, and now it's working even more against him, which is working in our favor. We know what we need to do to end it. Now we have the opportunity to end it. But when we go into this, we can't expect it to be easy. They're not going to give up that power ever if we don't try to take it from them. They're not going to give up that power as long as they see a path forward with them retaining control. And I think they still have a couple of cards left to play. And the reason I think that is because I want you to take a look at Canada specifically. Australia is a little bit different beast. Not because they have gun rights, because we know that's not true, but they have a little bit more of a rebellious spirit, whereas Canada has always really been an ideal nation when it comes to the people. I know that America likes to reserve the word patriot for Americans, but Canadians are very patriotic, and they were for a very long time until they got this jackass and gave him control, and then you started to see and the political leadership started to change towards immigrants, towards people who weren't fully Canadian citizens, people that had fled from, Haiti and all these shithole third world countries, and they brought their third world shithole country ideas and applied them to Canadian politics. That's when you started to see the patriotic Canadians start to take a back seat. But with that, for generations, Canadians have been conditioned to do what's right for their country. So now if you have a leader that has horrible ideas, allowing people with horrible morals, character, culture to influence, Canadian politics, the Canadian people are still very susceptible to those bad ideas and to what their leadership is telling them. Oh, bump the mic there. And when they seen any kind of pushback, they really had to look at what they could do to further manipulate the lives and the way Canadians have grown to live their lives. And I didn't even know this happened. I heard this, passing through a live stream by a young man. His name is Tyler Russell. He does a live stream on Cozy.tv called Canada First. And he was saying that, for a while there, you had Canadians fighting against the mandates. You had religious leaders going out and being arrested to protest, to say that they are allowed to continue to practice their freedom of religion. And so when Canada seen that pushback, because their leader is so fucking heartless, what he did was say, all right, let's take a look at the things that Canadians cannot live without. Let's look at this like a business instead of human beings. What can we do to manipulate Canadians into getting this experimental thing that we're trying to promote here? And so what they did is they said, hey, if you've became accustomed to enjoying alcohol or you've became accustomed to marijuana and have, used this as a way to cope with your issues, use this as a crutch. And even in some examples, Canadians believe that you can use marijuana for, medical needs and issues. That's their prerogative, whatever. But what Trudeau decided to do was say, if you want to buy alcohol, if you want to continue to use your medical marijuana card, you're going to have to show proof of vaccination to us, or you're no longer going to be allowed to enjoy those freedoms and liberties. And I didn't know this was happening. I was not aware of this. And what if you look at the numbers from the people that were vaccinated, fully vaccinated, from the date that this new mandate was issued to after, it almost doubled. I think they went to it was something crazy, like 57% all the ways up to like 89%. I don't think they're that high, but it was a very dramatic, it's very hot in this room, very dramatic increase in the amount of people that were fully vaccinated. So think about that for a second. We already, in America, have justified private businesses saying that we cannot enter their property or partake in whatever they have to offer if we're not fully vaccinated, that's their right because, it's private property, it's a private business. We've already, for whatever reason, made that be the baseline that you can now do this. So, and the really scary part is even though we've had the Supreme Court say that it's unconstitutional for Biden's mandate when it comes to employers with 100 or more employees to force them to be vaccinated to continue to work there or be tested, they did uphold the healthcare workers and said that the healthcare workers that the mandate still stands, that they can still force them to be vaccinated, which was a horrible precedent to have been set by the Supreme Court, in my opinion. Because now what they can do is they already think it's okay for, Kroger's, Walmart, whatever, to not allow you to go and get your groceries if you're not vaccinated. They can already legally do that, okay? They've already made that okay. They've already pushed it through the mainstream. They've already made Netflix movies so these housewives that stay home or cannot, do anything past watch a Netflix series, they've already been brainwashed that this is what's going on, that any business for any time, for any purpose, cannot allow you to enter their business because you're not vaccinated. Okay, well, now the Supreme Court has upheld that if you're a healthcare worker, you can't work in the healthcare industry on a federal level if you're not vaccinated. So are you not seeing the room there that's left open for them to be able to say, hey, are you addicted to marijuana? And I know a lot of people think that's not a thing. You're fucking retarded. But do you depend on some type of opiate to be able to get through your day? Or have you been brainwashed and manipulated into being controlled by the pharmaceutical industry? Well, now you have two options. You have the option to go through withdrawals, live a horrible life for the next month or so to adapt to the new way your body will function without these medications. In some cases, you might even die from withdrawals, especially in the case of alcohol. I had an uncle pass away from alcohol withdrawals. Well, he didn't pass away from that. He passed away from kidney failure, but it was kind of linked, similar, intertwined there. Either way, how much do you think that the overall fully vaccinated rate in the United States would go down, stay the same, or increase if Biden came out tomorrow and said, you have to be fully vaccinated to participate in the pharmaceutical industry or to go to a hospital to seek out medical attention from any kind of facility that receives federal help financially? Do you realize how many people that would impact? Probably more people that are vaccinated and fully vaccinated now. And you would have a lot of people get really scared. And what that's doing is it's making people that disagree with the vaccination, disagree with the mandate, do something drastic out of fear, not what's best for them, not what's best for their children and the future of their children, and the mandate that they are setting and the precedent that they are setting for the federal government to control their population, but they're doing it out of fear. So trust and believe me when I say that there is still room out there for the federal government to manipulate a very large portion of the American people into getting vaccinated. And every person that is vaccinated, that is one more person that they are going to then use to try to say, this is what needs to be done. This is what we have to do to move forward as a society. Look how many people's done it. So we have to be careful there. And like I said, because we're on YouTube, I can't really get into my opinion, but my opinion on it is, I think for every person that gets vaccinated, it's working against the freedom and liberties of the American people. I'll just leave it at that, and just toss that around in your brain for a little bit. Imagine what would happen, the amount of control they could regain. I see it too. I know that they're losing the narrative when it comes to COVID. All right? I opened this podcast with, they're losing the narrative. This is what we need to do to take our country back without being, violent. We can just politically manipulate them the same way that they've done the American people for the last 2 years. So I see it. I know that they're losing it. But just do not forget how desperate politicians, progressives, and Democrats are and what they're willing to do to retain that power and that control. Look at their cities. Look how many innocent people die every single day. And this doesn't stop at politicians. This doesn't stop at the people that have, firsthand contact with politicians. You have some of these housing markets. If you were to look up certain parts of California and you're trying to buy a house, you can't look up crime statistics because they're afraid that people won't move there because of all the minorities committing violent crimes in that neighborhood, and that it will drive the price of the property down in that area. How sick is that? That is fucked up. Could you imagine being from Maine or Montana or somewhere you don't really pay attention to California politics or what's going on as far as their culture out in California? Your daughter gets a scholarship to UCLA or somewhere out in California, and you decide to move out there for a year or two to kind of show your daughter or your child that support out in California, so there's not so much of a land gap in between you two. And you see this neighborhood that looks nice, because what I noticed from a very young age is, if you watch the movies like Boys in the Hood, Menace to Society, even their ghettos at some point looked very nice. Their houses, the way that they were built, the curb appeal was still very nice, but these were still the neighborhoods that hundreds of children and youths were being shot up every weekend. So you see this nice, it looks pretty appealing as far as curb appeal. And it's one of the only places that you can afford because California is so fucking expensive. You decide to move there, right? You're unable to look at some of the crime rates and the crime stats through these housing websites. You don't really do a whole lot of due diligence and looking at things, but the advertisement says, this is a good, friendly neighborhood, blah, blah, blah. It's the only thing you can afford. You move there to be closer to your daughter. Your daughter then is able to walk or ride her bike to your house for dinner on Sundays. And on the trip back to college, she is violently attacked or raped or murdered because of the crime rate and the violence that happens in that neighborhood, that this housing market or these real estate agents refuse to add the crime statistics in front of you and let you know truly how that community was. And so you were manipulated there. That is just the level that these people will go to. They are willing to put your children in danger. They are willing to have your children go into elementary school and teach them that, you know, these are what gay people do, the sexual orientation, all of the physical aspects that go into that, because they're trying to be more inclusive. They're trying to be equal. So they think it's okay to brainwash your children into telling them that this is the way that some people just are, blah, blah, blah. Now, let's say that your child never had a thought in the world about being gay, but now they are introduced into this lifestyle. And I'm not saying that they're going to become gay or whatever, but just in exploring that road, do you know how much more vulnerable your child is when they go online or they go into these chat rooms looking to explore their sexuality, as far as homosexual or, you know, older, younger, everything that is encompassed in sexual orientation. When they go online and they look for these things and they talk to people about this, that is making them very vulnerable to all the sexual predators out there. There is no lack of creepy old motherfuckers out there that are willing to groom and brainwash your child so they can have that 1 or 2 hour sexual experience that is going to fuck your child's life up for the rest of their lives. And it all started because their crazy ass teacher in their elementary school wanted to hang a fucking rainbow flag. So there is no stopping the levels of hell that these people are willing to dive into to retain that power, is what I'm getting at. And it all comes back full circle. Like I said, I mean, the more that they push this shit on us, the more we're going to see society go downhill, the more we're going to see our kids being targeted, the more power we're going to see the federal government retain. The only thing this is doing is building an opposition against them. I don't know why they can see that. There has always been a cause and effect factor when it comes to politics, when it comes to culture, when it comes to all of that. So, you know, maybe they're on to something. I wouldn't call it white supremacy, but bet your ass if they keep pushing the CRT bullshit, which is truly what they're doing there, is they're trying to manipulate you, even in the name of CRT. It is not critical race theory. It is anti-white, you know, fucking hate. They hate white people. That's what that is. They're taking everything good out of white history and forcing everything that we potentially made mistakes with down our throats. That's what they're doing. They're trying to set a narrative there that white people are fucking bad. So when black kids grow up, they don't feel the same way about their fellow white man, and they are able to stab them fucking 17 times in a Walmart parking lot because they no longer see those people as humans. They see them as the race that has demoralized and tried to take over the world for the last 1,000 years. That is what CRT is. And yeah, so it's very dangerous. But like I said, all you're doing here is you're making the youth grow up, and they're going to see this. They're not going to give a fuck what you thought about 9/11. They're not going to care about what happened because they didn't see it. They didn't feel it. And the same thing with the George Floyd bullshit. That's why George Floyd has more impact than Martin Luther King had impact right now, because the youth, the people that are getting into politics right now, they are more in line. They have more in common with George Floyd than they did Martin Luther King. Now, I think Martin Luther King is just like anything else that had a lot of political interaction or influence in American politics. I think that it was controlled. I think the FBI had a lot to do with it. I've already read into things just over these last 48 hours saying that Martin Luther King didn't even write his own speeches. So I'm sure, you know, there's always things that we're not told, whether it be, you know, Martin Luther King, all the ways to George Floyd. Everything and anything in between there was probably manipulated by the federal government to some extent or another. And if you didn't see it with your own eyes, if you weren't there to participate and how that felt and how those communities interacted with those things, then you're going to be able to be manipulated. Thank God that our youth today is smart enough and has adapted to the point where they know that this has happened in history, throughout the American history, that the federal government has tried to take advantage and manipulate every scenario that they possibly can. So every time that something happens that they haven't, hold on, there's a cat freaking out or something here. I don't know what that. I think there was two cats fighting outside my mudroom or something. What was I getting at? Sorry if you hear this. I don't know where that cat is. It's somewhere outside, fucking freaking out, trying to fight another cat or something. So this new here's what's going to happen in the future. You're going to need millennials just for the number game, all right? When it comes to the next movement, and clearly, I don't try to hide the movement that I support. I'm gonna have to go out there and throw water or something at them if they keep that shit up. But I don't hide the political movement that I'm involved with, that I believe, that I support. And even within that movement, what you have is there's a very, I'd say, 85% is has a all right, just hold on. I'm gonna go fucking throw something at these cats. All right, sorry about that. That was super fucking annoying and took longer than I thought it was going to. I was just going to go out there and throw water, but it's pretty chilly, and I don't think it'd be right if let the cat give its opinions. So we have a cat guy. I'm sure if you don't have one of these people in your neighborhood, you know the kind of people that I'm talking about. You've probably seen it in a Netflix series or something. So there's a guy that lives across the street, and he has a different style house as everybody else. It's kind of got like the garage underneath the house, and it's just the property is set up very weird. and it's very isolated and has a lot of shrubbery that conceals a lot of it. So it's very hard to see what's going on there. Not that I'm trying to be nosy or anything, but this draws cats because I guess they feel safer there. So all the neighborhood, wandering cats end up over there. And now I'm pretty sure all of our cats are fixed. I think maybe one of the males out of the 3 isn't fixed yet because he's too young. But the girl is fixed, and that's actually what was happening. So one of the random cats that ends up in this property, that they lay little piles of cat food like surrounding the property, like they're drawing them there. I don't know why the hell you would want that, because if there's 2 things that I cannot stand, it is cats, that noise they were making. That's why I couldn't even concentrate with it going on, and the smell of cat piss. I can't stand that shit. Like, I'm not one of these guys that just absolutely hates cats. My wife likes cats. I can enjoy them from time to time as a further seen pet. I'm more of a dog guy, but the smell of cat piss and the noises that they can make just drives me fucking nuts. And the guy that lives right across the street from me has like this cat sanctuary. So from time to time in my podcast, you might pick up a cat or 2, fucking around, fighting each other or whatever. And I do this in my mudroom to kind of isolate the noise that's coming from my house, but it leaves it susceptible to the noises that happens outside. And I've tried to control that a little bit more. I got a noise gate going on, and I've started to kind of block off some of the windows with some sound treatment and things, so hopefully it doesn't go to affect that as much. I could have brought one of the cats, but so what was going on there is they have like this playground equipment, and I couldn't see. And like I said, I didn't want to just throw like a bucket of water because I didn't know if it was a cat that goes inside, outside, or anything like that, or if they were just stuck outside because they're a stray. I didn't want them to be soaking wet in like 20 degrees outside. So I wanted to see which cats they were, what was going on. And it was a cat I'd never seen before, had one of the cats that my wife feeds like pinned down. I don't know if he was trying to like mate with her or was just trying to fuck it up, but all I did was kick the playground equipment, and it kind of scared both of them to run off there. So I could have brought one of them because one of them will come up to me, but I think just from the experience she had going on there, it probably would have been difficult. Not to mention I'd have hair all over me, and I already have a Malamute. My dog is a Alaskan Malamute, and he sheds so bad. So I already spend half the day, lint rolling and vacuuming and trying to keep all the hair from flying up everywhere. But yeah, so I didn't. I know I spoke about this a little bit at the beginning, how I said I don't go live to YouTube very often, and that isn't because I have something against the platform per se. It's just every time that I've got on here, and I wouldn't doubt that even this episode, as careful as I've tried to be today, that they come up with some bullshit reason to give me a strike. And I already have 2, and 1 I didn't do. Like I was talking about, what's that asshole's name? Dan Crenshaw. And how I think that conservatives shouldn't support Dan Crenshaw. I think that he is a grifter. I think he's an evil person. His voting record has not shown that he is a conservative, has not backed up any of his stances. He is not for the Second Amendment as much as he likes to grift off of that, community. He's just not for it. And it surprises me that he's able to get away with the things that he gets away with in Texas. I would think that Texas would have a little bit more control of their politicians, but I think if anything this year, just in 2022, we've seen that between Dan Crenshaw and Ted Cruz, that Texas might not be doing a whole lot of due diligence when it comes to who they're letting represent them in the political arena. So we might even see some of these older GOP politicians get replaced in the next couple of years because they've been shown to be very hypocritical on very key opinions and principles and things that Texans really care about. I know that it's a very hot topic when it comes to abortion, but there's clearly enough support there. There's clearly enough people in Texas that are willing to stand up and fight against abortion that they are able to pass through some of that legislation down there that can't be done anywhere else in the country right now. And for them to have some of these more griftier politicians like Ted Cruz and Dan Crenshaw, it just blows me away. I'm not sure how they're able to do that. So hopefully they mix it up a little bit. I'm more so concerned with my local politics. My buddy brought up a good point. I was talking about this months ago when the mayor race happened in Dayton, Ohio. I don't live in Dayton, Ohio, so that's not a dox, but I do live fairly close. I grew up in Dayton, Ohio. Very shitty city. Went downhill very quickly. We seen kind of the hipster revolution kind of prop it up for a couple more years, but that quickly fell apart, right? Because all those hipsters, all those that LGBT community that tried to reinvest in some of those shitholes down there, you know, they were just in it because they had a little bit of money from mommy or daddy, and they wanted to go stick things in holes and things. And you know, once they lost any kind of physical appeal down there, or it got cold, they kind of got scared off. So I knew that wasn't going to last long. But they had a mayor down there. There's a woman, very liberal, evil woman, and she was replaced this last election. And I was afraid. I would almost have preferred that she stayed in office. Even though she's super liberal, she was kind of trying to influence things for the better down there. Even though they were better progressively and for the Democrats, they were still kind of reviving some of the buildings, some of the historical structure down there, trying to make it more appealing, trying to bring people back into the city, even though it was still a disaster. At least the initiative was there. And I knew that, you know, because whether you like to believe it or not, whether you want to say that it's a stereotype or not, minorities don't vote for the GOP. They don't vote for Republicans, not in an amount that would make any significant difference. So since Dayton is pretty much a minority cesspool at this point, we knew they weren't going to be Republicans, which only means it can go one of two ways. It can stay the same or it can get more progressive, and that's what it did. They got a black liberal fucking race huckster in office down there who had pictures, the pictures that he was using to promote himself were with Reverend Jesse Jackson. I think that's who it was. And there was another picture with, shit. I just remember the Jesse Jackson one. As soon as I seen that picture, I said, oh, I get it. You're another progressive race huckster that's going to push all this fucking anti-white narrative down our throats. And like I said, when I have to go into these cities, you know, once, twice a week, my alert, my awareness is on guard because I know the narrative that's being set down there. I had a Trump 2016 Make America Great Again real big in my back windshield, and I had to take it off because I had some people throw some rocks at my car. Like as I was driving down the side streets in the inner cities there, they cracked my front windshield. And, you know, of course, that they, when I called the cops or tried to seek any kind of justice for this, they looked at me like I was the asshole. What are you doing coming to a liberal city and fucking bitching because you got rocks thrown at your windshield because you support Trump? You should know better. Now I do. That's one of the main things I was getting at the beginning. You know, you can't go into these liberal cities and do some of the things that they're able to do, which just goes to show you that I can talk about this all day, by the way. This equality, this idea of equality. I don't know how they're even able to get away with using that fucking word. Because if you go to a liberal city wearing a Trump shirt and you're attacked, you're the bad guy because you're white. You tried to go there and promote your politics and you should know better. But if a black guy drives through my neighborhood where I live now and they go to a gas station, and I know this is the case because I've had, conversations with people I work with that went exactly like this. They go into a gas station and they felt like they're being looked at some type of way because they're black. And they felt like maybe the cashier thought they were going to rob the place. The cashier didn't say anything. The cashier didn't even use his body language to promote this idea. He just took this look as that's what it felt to him, right? And we're supposed to all bow down and wash this guy's feet now because he felt some type of fucking way because he went to a gas station in a white neighborhood and felt out of place. Well, if that's how you feel, then go to a fucking black gas station. I mean, come on. But let's say the cashier was to say something, was to be like, hey, what are you doing around these parts or something like that. That guy would be on the 7 o'clock news. He would probably get charged with a fucking hate crime. So don't let them fool you for a second. They do not want equality. They want the home field advantage, even when they're playing on your home field. They want to make your home field their home field, and whether they're in their city or your city, they want the handicap to go to them. They want the benefit of the doubt to go to them, and it always will as long as we allow it to. And that just one more thing that leads me to believe that the movements politically that are coming up now that have a large portion of them being youthful, I guess this is kind of what I was talking about before I left to deal with the fucking crazy cats. Some of these movements like America First, where you probably have a good 85-90% of them being somewhere in the ballpark of 25 and younger. So it's a very youthful, energetic movements, and these are on both sides. Because what happens is, I think for a large portion of the millennials, they let 9/11 kind of form their policies. If you were some of these people that felt like we should kind of put a pause on, Muslims coming into the country to protect the American people, your political ideas grew in a certain way that way. And if you felt like the president or any politicians were attacking Muslims, then your politics probably went the other way. And either way, 9/11 had a very large hand in the way that the millennial population grew up to look at politics. But now we have these, the Zoomer Alpha generation, where they didn't watch it on TV. I know where I was when the second plane flew into the Twin Towers. I was in school. For whatever reason, most teachers thought it was a good idea to put it on TV to have all these children watch the fucking plane fly into the building. Like, well, this is a great idea. And then within, I'd say, 15, 20 minutes, my dad pulled me out of school, and we went to my grandma's house to make sure she was okay. Because at the time, I lived I'm talking 5 minutes away from Wright-Patt Air Force Base, which is one of the bigger Air Force bases in the United States. So we had a lot of jets taking off, breaking the sound barrier, making big booms. So a lot of people were freaking out, thinking that there were bombs or something going on around the Dayton area, around Wright-Patt Air Force Base. So we didn't really know what's going on. So I remember it very vividly, like it happened yesterday, in fact. And I'm not going to deny that day and what happened after that shaped my political views. So when I was growing up, I seen the Bush administration kind of poorly handle that, and I think we all knew he poorly handled that, and everybody just wanted something different, and that's why everybody voted for Obama. And then we seen that different doesn't always mean better, and we should have learned that lesson, but we did not, because now we got Biden. And I just, whether we're talking about the youth and the political movements now, that's a question that I never really got the answer to. Why people, or older conservative people, thought that Obama did such a poor job when it came to politics, being the president, whatever. If they thought he did such a poor job, why do they think that his vice president was going to do any better? Why was their initial thought not, hey, this is just Obama's politics more like shitty take on it, pretty much. And so I don't know, man. That I don't see any of the appeal at all for Biden. I try to look at things from both sides. I was reading some Jared Taylor articles, or maybe it was an interview, I can't remember which, where he talked about you should always take your political opposition, your opponent, and try to look at it, because whether you believe it or not, they are trying to do what they feel is best for their community, their cultures, their cities, their towns, their country. Whether you disagree or agree, they truly feel like they're doing what's best, and you should always look at it from that perspective. But I don't see that with Biden. Like, this guy is just a fucking retard front to back, and then he carries over some of the worst policies from the Obama administration, and then the very few little things that Obama maybe had a tiny bit of a grasp on, like immigration, he totally mishandled and fucked up straight out of the gate. So I just, and to not know that was going to happen is my question. Like, how did these people say, I don't want to vote for Trump because he's mean? I would much rather let our country fall apart. Like, how do you obtain that mindset? Maybe the white population is truly decreasing. Maybe white people aren't having kids as often as frequently as I thought, because obviously these people don't care about the future. They're old enough to throw away their votes and their policies to not care about the future. And that's one of the reasons why the youth and these political movements, I keep getting off topic, are so important. We have to get, and that's why the Zoomers and the Alphas, as much as they like to pick on the millennials and maybe even some of the younger Gen X crowd, they need those people for numbers' sake. They have the same ideas, principles, morals that the Zoomers and the Alphas have for a large case. You just have to know how to show them that. You know, the Zoomers and the Alphas have to say, look, millennials, we know you've seen something different from what we've seen. So we question some of the things that you don't, for the better. But look, we're white, we're Christian, we want to live in a polite society, so maybe trust us on this. Maybe come see what we're about. Come see our ideas for the future, because our ideas for the future are for the better of us, because we are the future and our children's future. So these are ideas that will have good impacts for the next 50 years and beyond. This isn't, voting for an infrastructure bill that will put us in debt for the next 20, 30 years, and we don't care because we'll be dead. This is impacting 50, 60, 70 years from now, because we'll still be alive. We will still be here to have our feet held to the fire, because we'll still be here. And so that's why I think, even though these people are young, younger than we are anyways, even though in some cases some of their life experience isn't as marinated as ours, you have to think that they really have a reason to do what's best for the country, for the future, because they're going to have to live it. If they sign a bill that's going to be paid off through the next 100 years, they will be paying off the majority of that bill. So they have to be careful. They have to look at things and have a lot of foresight. And as well as this hope, equality bullshit is kind of lost on the youth, because that was pushed so heavily on the millennials, and we've seen how horrible of a thing and how much of an impact, multiculturalism has had on America, that some of these Zoomers and Alphas are going, no, dude, like, well, we hear you, but you've already got to play that card, and it was shit. It got us nowhere. In some cases, we're in worse race relation aspects now than we were during the time Martin Luther King was giving his speech, right? So how does that happen? Well, it happened because instead of dealing with any of the underlying issues, we just looked at the symptoms, slapped a Band-Aid on it, and over time, the balloon kept growing to the point where it just fucking blew up. And I think that's something that a lot of people aren't willing to talk about except for the youth, because they have to deal with it now. Their children, their white children, have to grow up in a society where they're the bad guy, because you hear people talk about the comic book bubble bursting. This is just an example, not that it has any relevance. But you talk about, the house market collapsing, the stock market, being on this bubble where it's about to burst. You don't think nothing like that happened with race relations? I'd say probably 2 or 3 years after Obama was in office and he kind of really fueled that fire is when that bubble started to get blown up again. And I think 2020 it kind of burst, and we've seen the fallout and the outcome of that. And that's why they're so afraid of white rage, of white supremacy, because they know we're the majority, and we see this as a bad thing for the future. And if we have any wits about us, if we're going to actually pay attention to the cause and effect, we're going to start to target some of these things that the politicians and the progressives have become so dependent on. And they are going to keep calling us a racist when we're trying to make these things better. They're going to keep trying to attack us as we try to make these things better with race relations, because we know how it doesn't work. And so anything that we try to veer off the track of the progressives, they're going to look at that as a threat, that we're coming and doing what they've done to us for the last decade, and they're going to fight against that, and we have to be aware of that. And that's why I'm saying you have to get over being called a racist. I think that the millennials, the Gen X people, they have to get over this age gap. They have to get over not being the ones in charge. I've accepted that. I can come on here and kind of voice my ideals, my opinions, my lived experience, but at the end of the day, I also follow it up with, look, here's this guy. Yes, I'm 33. I'm not ashamed to admit there's a 33-year-old person out there that has a better idea than me. And instead of force what I think is best onto people, I'm going to kind of signal to him as the leader and the beacon of ideas of where we need to go with this society. And, it just comes... Maybe that's the GOP's real underlining issue, is there's too many chiefs, not enough Indians. And I think that's why Trump was such a good thing for the GOP. I don't, sure, now that he doesn't have so much control and influence, you have a lot of these politicians trying to do Trump without Trump, which is not going to work, because that authority isn't there, that hierarchy isn't there. You're trying to portray these ideas and these policies where at the top of that pyramid is a hierarchy. And if you don't have that there, it's not going to work. So I think that, the millennials, the reason why the Zoomer Alpha generation has so much constructive criticism, vice versa, towards each other, is because they're using that age against, and that's not what we shouldn't be using age as a negative thing here. It should be a positive thing. We should be trying to get the old politicians out of office and put people in power that have something to lose, that will have to be there for that future that they're voting for, that will have to foot the bill that they are writing. They will have to write the checks of the bills that they are passing through Congress. But yeah, they didn't see everything that we seen, so they're questioning things that we can't even grasp the concept of questioning, and it's made the youth in this country very divided. You either have these real Chad, Catholic, conservative youth, or you have this I don't know if I'm a boy or a girl, or maybe I'm this new thing with a new noun or pronoun that nobody's ever heard of yet. And I think if you are to look at those two parties as the new GOP and the new DNC, it's pretty obvious to see who's going to win, because one side has no foundation, has no morals, has no principles. The other side does. The other side doesn't even know what they want to do about bathrooms, and I know that's kind of a boomer take, but and the other side is worried about how they're going to rebuild this country. And at the end of the day, or we're not really talking about Democrats or Republicans, we're talking about, do you want your kids to have a future in the United States where they have freedom, liberties, and a polite society? Or do you want this to be a fucking freak show where anybody at any time can walk out on the street and get stabbed to death with none of the tools that are there for them to be able to use to defend themselves? I mean, of course you can get stabbed anywhere, anytime, any place, but we should still be allowed to obtain and use the tools necessary to defend ourselves against. And obviously, one side of the youth doesn't want that. One side of the youth does want that. And I think it's time for the older generations to take a back seat and to start pointing towards the youth for them to take the lead. Because, yeah, a lot of the millennials, boomers, Gen X, they're so mind-fucked, so warped, that I don't know that they can see the right way. Look at Ted Cruz. For a long time, I thought Ted Cruz really knew what was going on when it came to conservative values. And now you have his fucking daughter coming out and putting him on blast, talking about she's a lesbian. She doesn't believe anything that her dad says. And so it's like, dude, how am I supposed to look to you as a leader when you can't even get your own house in order, bro? Like, it doesn't work like that. So it's time to start looking towards people that have their house in order, that built their house from nothing and sees a clear view of the future. We have to stop looking towards politicians when they're asked hard questions. What do you feel about interracial dating, interracial marriage? How do you feel about it? We're not going to hold you accountable for your answer. We just at least want to know the answer. Somebody like Ted Cruz, Dan Crenshaw, they're not even going to answer that question. They're going to beat around the bush. They're going to try to say it's not about race, it's about, class, or we need to focus on the globalist. They're going to try to deflect from that answer. And so I don't know that we can trust these people. Of course they have an opinion on interracial dating. They're just not willing to tell you. So if they're not willing to answer your questions, why are you willing to give them your vote? And we talked about this the last podcast. You have to understand, when Ted Cruz comes on Fox News with Tucker Carlson, they've already looked into everything to already try to manipulate you out of the starting gate. They had meetings and conferences about what color tie Ted Cruz was going to wear to appeal to conservatives. So if he's already trying to manipulate you with what color tie he's wearing, I don't think he's a very, very trustworthy candidate. You know what color tie I wear? The one I think I look the best in. Not the one that I've done, social studies on to see how minorities feel about this color. I don't give a fuck about that. I want to look my best, I want to do my best, and I want to provide the best things I can provide for my culture, for my community, and for my society. And until we start voting in politicians that think like that, until we start looking towards the youth that knows nothing but that, we're going to keep losing as conservatives. It pretty much what it comes down to is conservatives in America are kind of like a well-trained house dog. This dog listens. This dog is polite. It knows what to do. It follows, the rules of the house. But if you take a belt and you keep going after this dog, at some point it's going to turn around and it's going to bite your fucking face off, no matter how trained it is, because that survival instinct is going to kick in. That's what has happened to the conservative youth. Their survival instinct has kicked in. So the federal government, the Biden administration, is saying that it's white supremacy, that this is the biggest threat to our society, when in all actuality, it is the young Christian white population of America turning around and defending itself. And if we are not allowed to defend ourselves, if we are not allowed to project ourselves and have as much of the majority as we hold influence in society, you're going to start seeing this white Christian youth turn around and bite people's faces off. And that might look like racism to some, but you're just going to have to get over it. Like I said, they're fighting for their lives now. We're talking about instincts over fucking feelings. We're talking about white people as an ethnicity, as a legacy, as a people trying to survive. It is no longer about your fucking feelings. We just don't care. And this is why the topic of the United States breaking up is so touchy for me, anyways. I can see the benefits of both, the benefits of us staying together and the benefits of us breaking up. I can see both, appeals to both sides. However, white Christian America built that foundation of all 50 states, of all the big cities, of all through the justice system and everything that's been manipulated and warped over time. And I don't know if we should be willing to give that up. There's a big difference between saying, hey, this isn't working out. Maybe we should give California, New York, whatever, to the DNC, and the GOP will take over, Texas, Ohio, Florida. I don't know if we should be willing to do that, or if we should be fighting for a leader that's going to stand up and go, look, this is our legacy. This is what we built. This is how we did it. This is how we maintained it for 150 years, 200 plus years. If you don't like it, get the fuck out. And I know that's a harsh way to look at it. And I know there's even some of the opposition that uses this same verbiage against us, where they're saying, well, hey, if you don't like the big minority cesspool cities, why don't you just get the fuck out? Well, if they made it to where I didn't have to go to them, I wouldn't. But the fact of the matter is my ancestors built that fucking city, and we shouldn't have handed it over to them, and I don't think we should continue to allow them to do whatever the fuck they want with them. And we know that's what they're going to continue to do. Look at Charlottesville. Look at the statues that were melted down to build this statue of a fucking criminal because they more associate. Imagine that a fucking minority associates theirself with a drug addict, criminal, person who's violence towards women. They can see more of themselves in George Floyd than they can with some of the greatest men that have ever existed, that helped built, the Constitution, all 50 states. Like, this is outrageous. Of course they can. And why are we letting that happen? Why are we letting the minorities in this country continue to let people like that be their leaders? We should have a little bit of control over that. I don't know. I'm feeling like I'm kind of just rambling on here now. I kind of hit on the main topics that I wanted to talk about. Like I said, what we need to do, it's there. And for a long time, all I did was I fired up the camera. I came on here and I talked about the issues that was going on in America as far as the tyrannical federal government, whether it be, on a big scale, little scale, medium scale, it didn't matter. That's all I did was point out the bad things. And then I heard a young 23-year-old man say, listen, we can't just come on here and talk about the problems. We have to talk about the answers. We have to continue to have hope and fight for the future, or else we've already given up. And I truly believe that. And today I have give you one of those answers, one of those things. Will it work? I don't know. But I think it's the best shot that we have right now. That's not, violent, obviously. They have laid their handbook, opened it up to page 32 or whatever play they're playing now, and said, this is what we're doing, this is what we think is going to work, and we can use that play too. And either way, we're going to have a better outcome than what we have right now. Either we're going to use their own work against them, or they're going to see that we're using it and they're going to stop using it. Either way, it's a win-win. So it's there in front of us. We can do it. We just got to keep backing each other up, be on the same page, and like I said, not let the personal things about ourselves get too intertwined with our policies and what we're trying to do here for the United States. And we also have to keep in mind that the federal government, the progressives, the Democrats have no limits to what they will do to attack our children, to attack white America, to attack Christians, to try to bring us all down to the depths of hell that they themselves swim in. And because of that, we have to be on guard. We have to be on the lookout before things happen, not as they're happening. And I do believe they are going to continue to use the medical fields and the infrastructure there, as well as the pharmaceutical industry, to continue to attack us, to continue to scare people into getting vaccinations that they probably don't need. Well, you know how I feel about it. I just can't really say. So just keep those two things in mind. Keep fighting the good fight. And with that said, guys, stay safe, stay prepared. God bless. America first. Peace, y'all.